The following story is an Inuit tale from Alaska. Maybe some of you have read Running with the Wolves. Women who run with the wolves. It was years ago. But there was something about this story that has so much to provide for us when we consider our water ritual. I'm going to retell it as it was written by Dr. Estes. She had done something of which her father had disapproved. Oh, by the way, Dr. Estes is the one who gathered these stories, so she took verbatim by the person, the Inuit, who told her this story. She had done something of which her father disapproved, went the story, although no one any longer remembered what it was. Her father had dragged her to the cliffs and thrown her over into the sea. There, the fish ate her flesh away and plucked out her eyes. As she lay under the sea, the skeleton turned over and over in the currents. One day, a fisherman came fishing. Well, in truth, many came to the bay at once, but this fisherman had drifted far from his home place and did not know that the local fishermen stayed away from this area, this inlet, because they said it was haunted. The fisherman's hook drifted down through the water and caught, of all places, in the bones of Skeleton Woman's rib cage. The fisherman thought, now I've got a big one. Now I really have one, something to celebrate. In his mind, he was thinking of how people would greet, how people would think that this great fish would feed many people, how long it would last, how long he might be free from the chore of hunting. As he struggled with the great weight on the end of his hook, the sea was stirred to a thrashing froth, and his kayak bucked and shook, for she who was beneath struggled to untangle herself. And the more she struggled, the more she tangled in the line. No matter what she did, she was dragged upward, tugged up by the bones of her rib cage. The hunter had turned to scoop this up with his net. So he did not see her bald head rise above the waves. He did not see the little coral creatures glinting in the orbs where her eyes were. He did not see the crustaceans on her ivory teeth. When he turned back with his net, her entire body, such as it was, came to the surface and was hanging from the tip of his kayak by her long front teeth. Is this fantastic imagery or what? "Ugh!" cried the man, and his heart fell to his knees. His eyes hid in terror at the back of his head, and his ears blazed bright red. "Ugh!" he screamed, and knocked her off the prow with his oar and began paddling like a demon toward the shoreline, not realizing she was tangled in his line. He was frightened all the more, for the faster he rowed, she appeared to stand upon her toes while chasing him all the way to the shore. No matter which way he zigged or zagged his kayak, she stayed right behind, and her breath rolled over the water in the clouds of steam. Her arms flailed out as though to snatch him into the depths. "Ah!" he cried as he ran aground. In one leap, he was out of his kayak, clutching his fishing stick and running, and the coral-white corpse of Skeleton Woman still snagged in the fishing line, bumpity, 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 bumped right behind him. Over the meat laid out to dry, he ran, cracking pieces at his mucklucks bored down. Throughout it all, she kept up. In fact, she grabbed some of the frozen fish as she was dragged behind. Then she began to eat, for she had not gorged or feasted for a long, long time. Finally, the man reached his snow house and dove right into the tunnel, and on his hands and knees scrabbled his way into the interior. Panting and sobbing, he lay there in the dark, his heart a drum, a mighty drum. Safe at last, yes, safe. Thank the gods. Raven, thanks, Raven. Safe at last, all bountiful Sedna, safe at last. By the way, in Inuit mythology, life, death, life, that's Sedna. She is the figure representing life, death, life. Imagine when he lit up his well-oiled lamp, there it lay in a tumble upon his snow floor, one heel over her shoulder, one knee inside her rib cage, one foot over her elbow. He could not say later what it was. Perhaps the firelight softened her features, or maybe he was a lonely man, but a feeling of some kindness came into his breathing, and slowly he reached out his grimy hands and, using words softly, like a mother to a child, began to untangle her from the fishing line. Ah, na, na, ah, na, na. First he untangled the toes, then the ankles. Ah, na, na, ah, na, na. On and on he worked through the night, until, dressing her in furs to keep her warm, Skeleton Woman's bones were all in the order a human's would be. He felt into his leather cuffs for his flint and used some of his hair to light a little fire. He gazed at her from time to time as he oiled the precious wood of his fishing stick. He rewound the gut line, and she, in furs, uttered not a word. She did not dare, lest this hunter take her out and throw her down to the rocks and break her bones to pieces utterly. The man became drowsy, slid into his sleeping skins, and soon was dreaming. And sometimes, as humans do, a small tear gathered in his eye. The tear escapes the dreamer's eye. We never know what sort of dream causes this, but we know it is either a dream of sadness or longing. And this is what happened to the man. The Skeleton Woman saw the tear glisten in the firelight, and she became suddenly so thirsty. She tinkled and clanked, crawled over to the sleeping man, and put her mouth to his tear. The single tear was like a river. And she drank and drank until her many years-long thirst was slaked. While lying beside him, she reached inside the sleeping man and took out his heart, the mighty drum. She sat up and banged both sides of the drum. Boom, 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 boom. As she drummed, she began to sing, flesh, 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 flesh. The more she sang, the more her body filled out with flesh. She sang for hair and good eyes and fat hands, for warmth and all the things a woman needs, a person needs. And when she was all done, she returned the great drum, his heart, to his body, and that is how they wake and wrapped around one another in a good and lasting way. The people who cannot remember how she came to her first ill fortune say she and the fisherman went away and were consistently well fed by the creatures she had known in her life underwater. The people say that it's true. That's all they know. This tale is a resurrection tale about life, death, life. It's a little like relationships, close relationships. It's about deep and lasting love. Maybe it's about congregational life, the ebb and flow of delight and challenge. This tale is a resurrection story about homecoming. There is no question that it's a love story. I adore stories about people who genuinely care for others, even complete strangers. They see the horror, and then there's a little compassion, and suddenly they see the sweetness, the kindness, the humanity in a person. Additionally, it's a story about water. There would be no story without water. Fisherman could not have survived without the sea, and yet in the beginning of the tale, he found something ugly in its depths. The Skeleton Woman met her demise in the sea, yet she was sustained by the creatures in it. When tough things happen to us, do we see the creatures who are sitting in the pews all around us? So the two characters in this story depended on water. We, you and I, need water. Literally, our very lives depend on it. Think for a moment. Blood is 80% water. Brain, 75%. Human liver is 96%. Our bodies require water. Just a 5% decrease in fluids in the body will cause a 25 to 30% decrease in energy. If you're tired, drink a glass of water. See if it helps. Studies reveal that most of us in the United States on a daily basis are dehydrated. That's surprising because we have access to clean water. Not all of us. I'm reminded again of Jackson, Mississippi, still struggling to have access to clean drinking water. We need the minerals that exist in water, in underground and surface water, such as where we get our drinking water. Calcium and magnesium are present. Elements are essential for human body. Calcium is not only necessary for bones and teeth, it also plays a role in neuromuscular excitability. It decreases it. It assists the myocardial system and helps muscles to contract better. Water allows blood to coagulate effectively. So the other main element, magnesium, plays an important role as a cofactor and activator of more than 300 enzymatic reactions, including metabolism, synthesis of proteins, and so much more. You don't need me to give you a lesson in science, but you know often I am a seeker of the results of science, and you're going to hear it through my sermons. Thank you. Aside from the elements in the water, there is abundant symbolism associated with water. Religious cultures across the world incorporate it into rites and rituals, just as we Unitarian Universalists have. In the Baha'i system, there are laws concerning water and cleanliness. Respect for all creation in all its beauty and diversity is important, and it's a key element of creation. One of the writings says, "The Almighty Lord is provider of water, and its maker hath decreed that it be used to quench man's," and I will add, a person's thirst, but it is used dependent on the Almighty Lord's will. If should not be in conformity with his will, man is afflicted with a thirst which the oceans cannot quench. And that was Abdul Baha. Baptism, a Christian ritual involving the use of water, has its origin in symbolism of the Israelites being led by Moses out of slavery to a new life in Egypt through the Reed Sea or the Red Sea. The baptism of Jesus by John the Baptist in the Jordan River. For Christians, water has symbolic value in three ways. It washes away dirt and sin, fills everything it enters as God fills those who are immersed. Finally, it is said the body needs water like the soul needs God. And for those of us who are comfortable with the word love rather than the imagery of God, you can replace the body needs water like the soul needs love to survive. Shinto is Japan's indigenous religion. It's based on the veneration of the innumerable deities believed to inhabit mountains and trees, rocks, springs, and other natural phenomena. Worship, whether public or private, always begins with the all-important act of purification of water. Inside the many sacred shrines, there are troughs for rituals. Waterfalls are held sacred, and standing under them is believed to purify you. As I stated with the children, most Unitarian Universalist congregations hold a water ceremony at the end of summer where individuals and families return, bringing small bottles of water from places that they love. Since we're in Florida, as I stated, I like to do this in January or February because I want to be a reminder that we are so grateful for all who come through these doors, and that this time is a time of swelling, if you will, when we all come to this place, a source that feeds us. The water ceremony is an ingathering, symbolizing our interconnectedness. It celebrates the journey of water that travels and returns to a central source. So, as many of you may know, especially a long time UUs, this was established, especially in the 80s, but there's a lot of hints that through this women's group in the 70s. They were doing this ceremony, and it began with a ritual that Carolyn McDade is the composer of one of our favorite hymns. Can any of you tell me what that hymn might be? Very good. Spirit of Life was written by Carolyn McDade. She and her friend Lucille Shuck Longview decided to have this ceremony when the UU Conference of Women met in the 70s. It's a lovely ceremony. As we prepare to participate, I will begin this with these words by my colleague, the Reverend Takahashi. She said, "We gather as many drops, each winding down life's surfaces and ruts. Here we pull together as a single body, flowing together for a time. Together we are a stream, at times even a river. For our shared force, we can travel toward oceans of meaning and seas of connection."